With the unconscious, nature has provided us with a very powerful computer, immensely more powerful than any computer built by man. Unfortunately, however, there is no instruction booklet and we are hardly able to glimpse its potential, what it could do for us if we were able to use it well. Unlike the computer, the unconscious learns from experiences and consequently develops new programs and modifies existing ones, but it always needs to be addressed. Knowing what the unconscious does and what its functioning is allows us to really use it to our advantage instead of being at the mercy of its programs. It often happens that if a certain program has worked very well in a certain situation in our past, we tend to reuse it even today, but since the situation has changed and we have changed, the program is no longer useful. However, our unconscious continues to propose it again until we make it clear that it is better to replace it with a more appropriate program. Before explaining how the unconscious works and how you could exploit it, subscribe to our channel and smash that like button. How does the unconscious work? The unconscious part of our intelligence that automatically carries out all the mental processes that can be performed without analyzing, reasoning, and deciding, faculties that are reserved for the conscious mind. He is always working to fulfill our wishes and carry out orders. However, misunderstandings can often happen if we don't know how to give them orders. The unconscious is guided by our emotions. He attaches importance to things according to our level of emotional involvement. Little importance when there are few emotions, much importance when there are strong emotions. In his action, he moves in search of pleasant emotions or to distance us from unpleasant emotions. Therefore, it is mainly our emotions that drive the unconscious. To do this, associate the emotions we experienced at the moment with each event. When we remember the event, the emotion also occurs. Just as when we experience the emotion, the connected memory also comes to mind automatically. Everything that happens leaves traces in the unconscious, traces that are all the more profound the stronger the connected emotion is. With each repetition of the event, the traces become deeper, and therefore channel the unconscious more and more to follow those traces and to execute the relative learned program. The unconscious mind always carries out our orders and tries to fulfill our desires, but does not distinguish between useful and harmful actions. It is important to know how he receives what we want from him. Otherwise, he could run programs that are detrimental to us or others. Here are the important characteristics of the unconscious. Takes everything literally, does not think, takes everything seriously, follows the emotions. He takes everything literally. When we give an order to the unconscious, we must be very precise and use the right words. I'm stupid is different from I did a stupid thing. In the first case, after a certain number of repetitions, we end up convincing ourselves that we are stupid and that there is no room for improvement. In the second case, we can always learn to behave differently. He does not think. He carries out orders as he perceives them, without thinking about usefulness, convenience, side effects, and more. For this reason, the unconscious is even able to create diseases to carry out a poorly expressed order. If he realizes that we don't want to do a certain job, he causes us some disturbance that makes it impossible to do that job. The problem is that almost always, the disturbance that emerges is far more unpleasant than the work itself that we wanted to avoid. He takes everything seriously. It does not distinguish between a joke and serious information. Therefore, it is best to avoid joking about certain things, not only with ourselves, but with other people as well. If someone jokingly says, "You are really scarce," the unconscious could take the news as true. The same goes for jokes that mimic handicaps, so be careful what you say when you educate a child. Emotions follow. The unconscious mind follows our emotions, feelings, as well as the images, sounds, and smells they evoke. If we repeat 1,000 times, "I'm sure I can do it," but within us there is the fear of failure, the unconscious will listen to the fear and realize the failure. A good strategy to obtain the desired results is to visualize and imagine ourselves consistently in the image of us who have succeeded in the enterprise. If, on the other hand, a person thinks, "I don't want to get sick," is actually creating an image of illness within itself, and the unconscious may choose to follow this input that we give it. Better to create an image of yourself in health and full of life with a strong immune system to stimulate the unconscious to go in that direction. It is also good to avoid all denials, such as not, as well as all the stimuli that direct you to run away from something. Stimulating the unconscious to move toward a desired goal is much more powerful than stimulating it to avoid something. Exercise. Try writing a few words in block capitals with your less able hand. Difficult, right? Now try to do it only in your imagination. You will see that the movement is not smooth there either. This means that the problem is not so much in your hand, but in the fact that your unconscious has not learned how to move it. Now keep repeating the movement to your imagination, and you will see that slowly the movements will become easier. Now pick up the pen and try it in reality. You will see how much you have improved. Of course, your hand also needs some practice, but it will learn very quickly now that the unconscious has been trained. Motor process. One of the ways in which the unconscious learns is repetition. This serves to automate all those actions that we perform frequently. Do you remember the first time you drove a car? How difficult was it to think about all the actions to be performed at the same time? After a while, everything became automatic. The unconscious now does everything by itself, and we, with the conscious mind, can do other things. The unconscious cannot distinguish between the information that comes through our senses and those that we generate directly in our imagination. So doing something really, or imagining doing it, is the same thing for the unconscious. By exploiting this data, we can learn and/or perfect an activity by doing it in our imagination. We can use this technique for any bodily activity, to improve in sports, in playing an instrument, in manual work, etc. The technique works even better if, in addition to the manual gesture, we can also imagine all the sensations that would be involved in reality. This means not only imagining the movements of the hand on the sheets, but also feeling the contact with the sheet, the noise of the pen on the paper, the smell of ink, etc. The importance of emotions. Faced with a danger, an immediate reaction is required that only the unconscious can perform. The conscious mind would take too long. In these situations, we don't have many opportunities to learn, so we need a mechanism that guarantees immediate learning. Let's say we reacted to the first attack with escape, and this was successful. Thanks to the very strong emotion of fear, the unconscious immediately memorizes the program that has been successful and automatically proposes it the next time we are faced with an attack. The unconscious continues to run the program forever and regardless of the circumstances. To change an acquired program, the unconscious needs a different but equally pleasant, stronger, and more effective emotion. Even in these cases, the imagination comes to our aid, allowing us to create more suitable and pleasant responses to those past situations that had installed the wrong program in our unconscious. The diseases. Illnesses are also often caused by old and inadequate programs for the current situation. Frequently, they are programs installed by the education received. Let's think of a little girl who is constantly forced to keep everything in order with her constant reproaches. Her unconscious learns that an imperfect order is equivalent to being deprived of love. Since at that age, feeling loved is of primary importance, the unconscious decides that it is useful to do everything to maintain perfect order. So even as an adult, even when the parents are dead, this person will do nothing but be put in order and demand the same order from others, becoming unbearable to her family and herself. At some point, this person will get tired of always putting in order without receiving any gratification, but will not be able to stop because the unconscious demands it. When the desire not to do so becomes strong enough, the unconscious will intervene to fulfill the woman's desire not to have to clean anymore. Since the unconscious is unable to understand the reason for the cleanliness mania, it cannot intervene on the cause. Therefore, he must find another solution. For example, getting rheumatoid arthritis, which makes it very difficult to use the arms and hands. It will probably not help much at first, because the person will continue his work despite the pain. Thus, the unconscious will increase the pain until the person can no longer do anything. And finally, she will be able to stop cleaning without ceasing to feel love for this. But at what price? How do you go about solving such a situation? By replacing the old unconscious programs with more useful programs with some specific techniques. Thus, the person will always be able to love order, but become free to decide to what extent it is worthwhile to commit to maintaining it. He will find more satisfying things to do. He will no longer need to argue with family members, and in a short time, his rheumatoid arthritis will disappear. The filters. Since every simple event contains much more information than the conscious mind can handle, we need filters that select a few essential information to bring to the surface to a person's consciousness. These filters are managed by the unconscious, which thus helps the mind not be overwhelmed by information. There are many filters, and each person uses a personal combination of filters. This is why if 10 people see the same event and/or have to tell about it, we will hear 10 different versions of what happened. The combination of filters we use determines how we perceive the world. The two extremes of each filter are described below. Keep in mind that normally everyone has an intermediate setting that can be more on one side or the other. Together, detail. Determines and pays attention to the whole or to the details. Similarity, diversity. Determines whether in a comparison we see similarity or diversity. Presence, lack. Determines whether we notice what is there or what is missing. The famous glass half full or half empty. Introvert, extrovert. It decides whether we give more importance to the external world or to the internal one. Theory, practice. Determines whether one is more interested in theory and the world of ideas or practical things in application. Trust, distrust. Determines how much trust we place in others and how suspicious we are. Action, reflection. It determines if we react instinctively or if we think first. Toward, away from. It is a very important motivation filter because it determines whether we do things to get away from something or go towards something we desire. Programming, spontaneity. It determines whether one plans everything or whether one prefers spontaneity. Thought, feeling. It determines whether we approach things and make decisions rationally or whether we follow feelings. Almost all filters are adjustable. That is, there are infinite intermediate positions between the two extremes of a filter. Let's take together detail filter as an example. Who has adjusted this filter completely on the whole sees and perceives only the whole of things without noticing any detail. On the other hand, those who have adjusted the filter completely to detail perceive only some details without being able to grasp the whole. No filter setting is better or worse, but it is more or less suited to the specific purpose for which it is used. A together individual will evaluate his performance as a whole, while the detail individual will evaluate only a few episodes of his performance. The former fails to grasp its weakness, while the latter may only see these. The unconscious tends to use a regulation that has been particularly effective in the past and proposes it on all occasions. Instead, we can teach the unconscious to adjust the filters according to the circumstance and based on what we want to achieve. In this way, we can get the most out of the filters. There are filters of perception and action. The former serve to perceive the external and internal world. The latter instead decide how we react to various stimuli. The filters. The unconscious helps us to catalog and immediately recognize the importance we have attributed to past, present, future events, decision criteria, values, beliefs. The way in which the unconscious manages the past, present, and future determines whether we are facing the past, if we live only in the present moment, or if we are projected towards the future. If we have made it clear to the unconscious that we no longer want to remember an unpleasant or traumatic event from the past, it keeps it hidden. To do this, the unconscious consumes a lot of energy, and in addition, these hidden events continue to heavily affect our life, thus becoming doubly dangerous. In these cases, it is useful to dig up the traumatic memories and transform them into a resource with the help of an expert who guides the person in the discovery of the trauma and its transformation. A process that normally takes no more than an hour. Criteria, values, conventions often originate in the education and experience of the first years of life. But today, they do not necessarily correspond to our real needs. This creates internal conflicts that limit us and can be identified and adapted to our real needs. Troubleshooting. The unconscious can also help us in solving problems. It has stored an infinity of information and access through morphogenetic fields to collect information, works day and night, and has incredible processing capacity. So who better than him can find solutions to our problems? Scientists often, even without realizing it, use this tool to find solutions. They ruminate on the problem for days and months and then wake up and one morning, they found the solution. To stimulate this type of processing by the unconscious, we must ask ourselves very precise and timely questions on the problem, and in particular on the aspects where there is a lack of clarity. Repeat the questions every night before falling asleep and have patience. The unconscious mind will find the solution, probably in an unexpected moment, like a bolt from the blue. Did you know about the power of the unconscious? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe and see you in the next video.